Street, rated R.
A Nightmare on Elm Street opened at our local theater on November 9th, 1984, playing alongside Missing in Action. Now that's an exciting lineup. Less than a year later, on November 1st, 1985, we got A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. That's such a long title. No way that'll fit on the marquee. I bet the theater just stuck up Nightmare 2. Yeah, and the E in Nightmare was just a backwards 3. Of course, we were too young to see either movie in the theater. In fact, the first one we saw was Part 3 when it came out on video. Now that was a movie. After bathing in the glory of those gory kills, special effects, and Dick Clark Zsa Zsa Gabor cameos, we were running to the video store to check out the first two. We saw the original Nightmare on VHS many times, but Part 2 is a different story. We rented it once, sometime around 1988, and then never saw it again. For 33 years. Our interest in horror films occurred in the late 80s, right in the middle of the Freddy Krueger boom and bust. He was cool at first, but pretty soon everyone could see the character had been turned into a cash cow by a greedy corporation.
You know, they say that money is the root of all evil. Oh, no wonder I love it so much. I love you, I love you, I love you.
They pumped out sequel after sequel, each one lower in quality than the one before it. There's a Freddy TV series even we could tell was cheesy. The t-shirts were cool, but the products got silly, with dolls and squirt balls. There was a record album. It was like Freddy had Krusty the Clown managing his licensing deals. I honestly can't believe he didn't have his own breakfast cereal.
Yeah, the Force is with us.
Kids.
By the time Freddy's Dead came out, we'd lost interest in the series. High school was just around the corner, and Freddy Krueger seemed like a childish thing to be put away, like your Star Wars action figures and your glowworm dolls. Our taste in movies was expanding away from horror films to stuff like David Lynch and Stanley Kubrick and this groovy new crime movie called Reservoir Dogs. Going to the movies in 1994, we had our minds blown by Natural Born Killers and Pulp Fiction and The Crow and Ed Wood. The movies of the 80s suddenly felt tired and passé. That October, Wes Craven's New Nightmare came out, and despite attempting a unique take on another Freddy movie, it felt pedestrian and stale. It didn't even work as a nostalgia trip. Oh, here's our favorite movie character from when we were a kid. After years of bashing slasher movies, old Roger Ebert was praising the film.
It's smart, it's scary, and it's curiously thought-provoking.
I mean, what else was there to say? In 2020, we discovered our roommate, who otherwise seems to have the crappiest DVD collection of all time, happened to have a copy of Freddy's Revenge. This seemed like the perfect time to give the old gal a second viewing. The movie gets off on the right foot, with a great dream sequence involving our hero on a runaway bus being driven by Freddy Krueger. The desert landscape erodes into a chasm, like something from an early Tim Burton movie. It's a great introduction to our lead character, Jesse, who's just moved into Nancy's old house from the first movie. I must say, they did a great job cleaning up the burns in the rug and the explosion marks on the walls.
Dad, how come it took them 5 years to sell this house?
Wait, so the first Nightmare happened 5 years earlier? They did the same thing with Friday the 13th Part 2, set in it 5 years after the events of the first one.
5 years. 5 long years he's been dormant.
Jeez, what is it with horror filmmakers making 5 years the magic number? It's an easy way to answer any questions about plot holes. How come the house looks different? How come the neighbors don't remember anything? Ah, that was all 5 years ago. Like dozens of characters before him, Jesse is an awkward high school kid, new in town. He lives with his little sister, who looks like one of Freddy's jump rope girls, and his Mrs. Brady mother, and his distant father. There's this guy on Reddit who's constantly posting his conviction that Mr. Wheeler on Stranger Things is based on Jesse's father. Okay, sure, why not?
Nobody likes a smart-ass, buddy boy.
Look.
Of course, Jesse's father is played by the great Clu Glugger, whose long career saw him playing everything from cowboys to friendly bookshop owners.
Oh, I know. Isn't it wonderful?
Not to mention that same year in 1985, he starred in the incredible Return of the Living Dead.
What the hell is in those bags?
Rabid weasels.
Unlike most dorky kids, Jesse fits in pretty easy. He's got a best buddy, and he's got a girl who digs him. She's the one who finds Nancy's diary in his closet.
I know this thing is 5 years old.
I like how she skips right to all the hot stuff about Glenn.
Sometimes when I'm lying here in bed, I can see Glenn in his window across the way, getting ready for bed. His body is slim and smooth, and I know I shouldn't watch him, but that part of me that wants him forces me to.
March 15th. He comes to me at night, horrible, ugly, dirty, under the sheets with me, tearing at my nightgown with his steel claws.
Holy shit, it's like she's reading the diary of Laura Palmer. Like many sequels, there's visual callbacks to the original movie. The parents put bars on the window, Jesse wakes up from a nightmare like Tina, Freddy's glove is still sitting in the furnace. Lots of cast members from Freddy's Revenge turned up in other shows. Like Jesse's girlfriend was one of Jerry's babes on Seinfeld.
I think I have a little crush on him.
I'm so happy. My world suddenly has me.
And the coach is the guy whose wife keeps winning the Academy Award for costumes.
And the winner is Milena Canonero for Chariots of Fire.
Milena Canonero for Marie Antoinette.
Milena Canonero.
I haven't prepared this speech, so I have to hurry up because Marshall, my husband, said I have to get out here quickly. So I want to thank everybody who had anything to do with this movie.
I swear, he's gotten more airtime at the Oscars than anyone in this entire series. For the longest time, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 couldn't be discussed without referring to it as the gay one. The movie seems to be using Freddy as a metaphor for Jesse struggling with his sexuality. Is he gay? Is he bisexual? Yeah. At the end of the movie, Jesse's girlfriend goes to Freddy's hideout. That's where they have the dogs with human faces, probably inspired by the horrifying ones in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Of course, the dogs in Freddy's Revenge look like they're trying their hardest to shake the masks off. There's also ants coming out of her arm that has to be inspired by a similar shot in Chien on the Loup.
I am not afraid of you.
She defeats Freddy by giving him a big sexy kiss. Okay, so I guess the love of a good woman is enough to save Jesse from whatever sexual demons he was wrestling with. But wait, that doesn't work, because in the next scene, Freddy is back and driving that bus into the desert again. So I guess you could say Freddy's Revenge is an anti-conversion therapy movie. It's saying you can't pray the gay away. The part about Nightmare 2 that surprised me the most is the portrayal of Freddy Krueger. When people say Freddy, I immediately think of the wacky, pun-spewing, lovable child killer we all saw in movie after movie. But Part 2 was made immediately after the original, so Freddy maintains the ominous menace Robert Englund breathed into him in Part 1. I think Freddy in Part 2 is the creepiest, most malevolent of the entire series. In Part 3, Freddy has some style. There's a slickness to the makeup, there's a grace to his movement, he's making cracks like Arnold Schwarzenegger after killing a bad guy.
Let off some steam, Bennett.
By Part 4, the movies are designed to make the audience root for Freddy, not be afraid of him. But in Part 2, Freddy has none of those attractive qualities. He looks so grimy and gross, especially in the close-ups. Nobody is cheering when Freddy murders Jesse's best friend. It isn't a fantasy moment, capped off with a punchline. Just the senseless, brutal slaying of the person Jesse loved most. The filmmakers linger on his sorrow. It's a heartbreaking moment. There's nothing comparable in the rest of the series. It's interesting to imagine a world where the character of Freddy was kept this scary. He probably wouldn't have gotten all those licensing deals, probably wouldn't have made those appearances on Nickelodeon. But he'd easily go down as the most disturbing of all the 80s horror characters. Jason got too silly to take seriously. Michael Myers has had more valleys than peaks. Freddy here is like the original Leatherface. There is something truly fucked up about him. It feels like there's a line of decency being crossed. I wish they'd kept the character going in that direction. Some of the criticism of Part 2 is valid. It drops the whole angle of sleep deprivation that inspired the original. Some people also complain that Part 2 breaks the rules of the Freddy universe, because instead of killing people in their dreams, he's killing them in real life. That criticism seems a little more shaky to me. I mean, wasn't Freddy killing people in real life in Part 1 as well? Tina went flying up the ceiling, witnessed by Rod. Glenn was sucked into his bed and pureed, witnessed by his mother. Those are impossible, supernatural deaths, yet they really happened.
I've never seen anything like this before in my life.
It's not like Freddy killed them in their sleep, and they were found the next morning lying in bed as if they died from a heart attack. That blood pouring down from the ceiling certainly shows they were murdered in the real world, even if Freddy was invisible. I think the answer to that is part 1 is almost all a dream. In the last scene, Nancy thinks she's defeated Freddy, and all her friends have come back to life. But it turns out no, this is still the nightmare. The final image is those creepy girls slow motion jumping rope while reciting the Freddy rhyme. At the very start of the movie, we see those same jump rope girls, inexplicably playing on the lawn of the high school, before panning over to Nancy and her friends. That suggests to me that everything we see between those two bookends is one long dream. So, they're all having dreams within this one big dream? Sure, like Inception. Okay, well, but how do we know that Freddy's Revenge isn't following the same formula? That the whole movie's just one big dream sequence? I mean, it would explain why that goddamn bird exploded. And funnily enough, the idea of Freddy taking possession of a person's body in order to kill outside the dream world winds up being the plot of Freddy vs. Jason, where Freddy enlists Jason to kill kids so people will think it's him. That's right. And despite being made nearly 20 years later, it's actually less gay-friendly than Freddy's Revenge.
Tell me something. What kind of faggot runs around in a Christmas sweater?
Shenanigans. It's been a lot of fun, shenanigans. But now we've got to run. It's funny how the minutes seem to fly.